Hey guys, it's Mark from Jazz Guitar Lessons back again with you for 3 simple ways to improve your jazz comping. In this episode, I want to cover it briefly. I'll give you actionable tips, so perhaps grab your guitar now so you can follow along. Welcome to Jazz Guitar Lessons, where we help guitarists learn jazz faster, express themselves more fluently, and have fun along the way. My name is Mark, and if you're looking to learn jazz, form better practice habits, and especially if you enjoy a French accent, make sure to subscribe. So, digging into tip number one, quite frankly, it's misleading when someone asks you to do something and it's convoluted and it's telling you, well, do the other thing first. You've probably read the book The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Oh, you were there all along. Yeah, that's the story of the first tip. The story of the first tip is comping has more to do with the rhythms you use in your comping than the chords and the voicings themselves. So here's my challenge to you. Tip number one. Fix the rhythm for an entire chorus or two. If you're playing blues, you should do it for 3, 4, 5 choruses. That's it. Use a simple rhythmic figure. If you don't know where to start, you can head over to the Jazz Guitar Fellowship. It's a free school group. There's over 3,000 people on there now. You can get the 4 key jazz rhythms. One that you could start with, like right now is the Charleston figure. So 2, 3, 4, chunk, 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 chunk. Chunk, chunk. If you're more advanced, stay tuned for the next tips, but know that some people are surprised that either they can't do that very well, or they're surprised at how it sounds good with the voicings they currently have. They don't have to reinvent the wheel and change the rhythm and the voicing and the inversions. It's sort of the flat 9 on top and the this and the that. When they just make it groovy and interesting, that's one of the main ways to keep your comping very engaging. It has little to do with the voicings. Of course, grab the right voicings, but know that the number of voicings you need to learn is relatively limited to the music and the style, the sounds of the chords, but also to the instrument. So there's only a handful of voicings you need, and after that, making it really groovy, really in the pocket makes a huge difference. All right, on to tip number 2. So you know the story about reframing, like seeing something horrible happening. That's the second tip. So I have to admit I had an experience with, it was extremely rough for me to go through that, but I saw a cat being ran over by cars, and he wasn't really dead yet. So that poor cat was in the middle of the road. I called for assistance. I called the police, and then I called the animal shelter thing. It was hard. Like I had that on my mind for the next while, right? For the next week or two. It was very traumatizing. But the point is, if I can take that and reframe it to see I had to live that experience for another reason, and down the line, it's like, oh, it allowed me to, whatever it was, appreciate the presence of my own cat in the house. You know, Mitten, she was awesome. Or it allowed me to reframe relationships or whatever. So the reframe is a basic, I guess, psychological tool that we can use. So in the second step, I would say for getting better at comping, it has nothing to do with dead cats, I promise. But I would tell you, if you could reframe what you actually have, you're going to go much further. That was my first lesson with Gary Schwartz in Montreal, actually. He called it expansion and contraction. So the point is you start from a definite standpoint that's easy and understandable, and then you evolve it into different chords, specifically chords. So in my case, if you haven't seen this on the fellowship, go to lesson 6. You will encounter the process of building shell voicings. So shells evolve from staples. Staples have their roots on the 5th and 6th string, and shells basically tell you, well, remove the bass note. So that's a really powerful, heavy reframe you can do, because the reframe makes you still visualize the root on the bottom 2 strings. I still see, like myself, I see A and E string, I always see the root where it's at. I still think like a rocker in bar chords, essentially. But say I have a C minor 7 at fret 8, right? So it would be C, B flat, E flat, G. So 8, X, 8, 8, 8, right? And thinking in tabs also. So if I just take out that C, I'm left with 8, 8, 8 on the middle strings of the guitar. This is still a C minor. And this is what I call a shell plus 1, meaning you have your D and G string, the middle of the guitar, then you add one more on the B. And then if you wanted, you could go further with shell plus 2 and still adding the top string. But here's the catch with the reframe. When I think of these chords that have higher extensions, I don't think in terms of notes and extensions and alterations and inversions and note names. I just literally still see that root 6 or root 5, and I see it in my mind's eye, but I'm not playing it. but it allows me to build the top strings easily. So that's quite the reframe. Highly recommended. This is my second tip for better comping for jazz guitarists. Hey guys, just a quick note. If you're enjoying this content and you're eager to boost your own jazz guitar playing, then connect with us. We've transformed the jazz skills of thousands of guitarists. You can find the link in the description or head directly over to jazzguitarlessons.net to begin your journey. All right, let's dive back into the episode. And my last tip for getting jazz guitars to sound better, tension. Tension is a thing we often hear when a YouTube video guy will say, oh yeah, you got to do a flat 9, but then resolve that tension. A sharp 9. There's tension in dominant chords, say a 5 chord, like a G7 flat 9 that goes to C major. There is that, but also know that within chords, there is also a sense of tension, interestingly. And here's what I mean with this third tip. The 7th degree of a major chord is a tension. Let me repeat this, or rephrase it. When you're playing a C major 7, C, E, G, E, the B note, it's maybe I'm off key, sorry, but that note is a pull note. It wants to pull up to your C note, right? So here's my tip. That tension can be resolved. So as a starting point for all my students, and you can see this in the fellowship again, go and look up at the staples. The staples have C6. I don't even teach the major 7 because I believe the 7th is a tension, and it just sounds rounder and more resolved and more sat, like in sitting, the terms of sitting. It just sounds more sat when we have a 6 chord instead of a major 7. So here's a tip. If you haven't done that already, I highly recommend you learn the C6 or the C major 9 or the C6 9 that we have in the staple cheat sheet. That's absolutely for free to download, link in description. And another step, if you're more advanced, any major 7 shape you have, play the major 7 shape and resolve the 7th down to the 6th. So if you're playing a C major 7 of sorts and there's a B natural note, so it's the 7th, right? Resolve it down to the A note, to the 6th. So you create an inner tension. And with those 3 tips, so number 1, if you can learn to fix your rhythm, to really keep them steady and keep in the pocket, if you can learn to visualize roots, although you're already playing like extensions and upper shells and stuff, and if you can make your major 7s into 6, that could be a tip. Like hopefully by the end of today or by the end of the week, your comping can tremendously, drastically improve. And again, this is free, man. This is just little things we can do that we have false beliefs of, like vocabulary accumulation, right? We think we have to do all the 6th diminished versions from Barry Harris, and because Barry Galbraith did that, or like learn all the Joe Pass voicings, like, man, well, yeah, you can do that, but it's not going to give you as much gas as if you just play in the pocket and have really cool rhythms. On that note, I'm Mark from Jazz Guitar Lessons. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast episode. Please let me know in a comment and like and subscribe. It helps the algorithm here to suggest the things that I will do next for the podcast episodes. And I'll see you soon on the podcast, on the website, jazzguitarlessons.net/blog, on the School Free Fellowship, and on the YouTube channel. Thank you. Take care.